This is a joint event between Warwickshire Wildlife Trust and the Heart of England Forest, and we've got the following speakers with us this evening. So we have Ian Jelly, who's the Director of Landscape Discovery at Warwickshire Wildlife Trust, Katie Priestley, who's the Sherborne Valley Project Trainee at Warwickshire Wildlife Trust again, then Ben Gamble, a Learning and Skills intern here at the Forest, Rob Peat, who's the Thames Valley River Catchment Assistant at Warwickshire Wildlife Trust, and finally Avery Hill, who's a Biodiversity Officer at the Heart of England Forest. So before we go on to the presentations, I'd just like to give you all a bit of background on the Heart of England Forest. We are an environmental charity and we want to help reverse woodland decline by creating and conserving a huge broadleaf native forest to benefit the environment, wildlife and people. We have a number of teams that help us to do this. We have a forestry team, a biodiversity team, learning and skills team, a fundraising team, of which I'm part of, and a volunteering team. We also have internship and apprenticeship programs to provide as many avenues as possible for people to get into conservation. So if you want to be kept informed of any upcoming vacancies and jobs, please keep an eye on our job vacancies page on our website, sign up to our free e-newsletter and follow us on social media. And just finally, if you have any questions as we go through the presentation, if you could pop them into the chat box, I will go through them at the end and direct them accordingly to who I think will be best placed to answer them. So without further ado, I will get on with introducing our first speaker, Ian Jelly, who I think is going to start with some information on Warwickshire Wildlife Trust.
Hi Roz, thank you, and thank you for helping coordinate this event. It's great from Warwickshire Wildlife Trust's perspective to be working collaboratively with the Heart of England Forest on this, because we're great friends as organisations and we're trying to achieve the same thing, which essentially is nature's recovery. So Warwickshire Wildlife Trust is one of the 46 wildlife trusts around the UK. So we're all separate charities, but there's a wildlife trust covering pretty much every area of the UK. So wherever you're dialing in from tonight, you will have a local wildlife trust where you live or where you went to university or where your family are from or wherever else. Every wildlife trust is slightly different, but we come under the banner of the wildlife trusts, and we're supported nationally by the Royal Society of Wildlife Trusts that underpin us by supporting from below and helping to advocate on our behalf nationally, influencing government policy and helping to give nature a voice at a national level. But equally, our strength is in our local focus. So the wildlife trusts are all locally centred around what's important to them. So Warwickshire Wildlife Trust covers Warwickshire, Coventry and Solihull. And over that geographical area, we work in partnership with people like the Heart of England Forest, but also organisations like the Environment Agency, local councils, Severn Trent, but anybody really who's owning and managing land across the landscape, and also the communities that live here. So we have quite a lot of different parts to our charity. We've got the nature reserves team that oversee the management of our nature reserves. There's 65 nature reserves that the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust manage. And they're things like ancient woodlands, wetlands and wildflower meadows. We have an environmental education team that help to engage school groups and young people about the importance of the natural world. We have a health and wellbeing team that focuses on the benefits of connecting with nature in your daily life to human health, whether that be mental health or physical health. So we run health and wellbeing programs through that. And then we have an initiative called Team Wilder, which is around inspiring, enabling local people to take action for wildlife where they live. And those teams all work collaboratively along with my team, which is the Landscape Recovery Department. And we work at a landscape scale to try and enable space for nature and support people with taking action for wildlife in their industry. So we work with farmers to help them grow really high quality food, but also in a nature friendly way. We work with golf courses to enable them to be brilliant golf courses, but also to support nature. We work with local councils to help them have their parks and green spaces great places for nature as well as for walking your dog. So we work in partnership with lots of organisations to try and join the dots to create bigger, better, more joined up areas for wildlife and for people. And our aims across the Wildlife Trust are to try and ensure that 30% of the UK land and sea is supporting nature's recovery by 2030, and that we're enabling 1 in 4 people to take action for wildlife during that time as well, through our Team Wilder initiative. And with the general election looming, we're trying to ensure that all parties think about nature on their part of their campaign trail. So we have a huge range of different things that highlight the different types of jobs that you might be interested in working in this sector. And all of that wouldn't be possible without the support of our sort of support services teams. We have a finance team, a membership team, a marketing team, lots of people in the background that essentially enable the organisation to have the impact it does. So there's loads of different opportunities with different backgrounds that people could get involved in. Some of them are the kind of muddy jobs, and you might hear about some of those tonight, where you get out and do fun stuff outside. But there's loads of other creative and critical jobs to how the organisation functions. And we're here to share some information about the different routes that people have come in to either changing their career or going through academia to get to where they are today, and to hopefully answer any of your questions that you might have on whether this sort of career will be right for you. So I'm now going to hand over to one of my brilliant colleagues, Katie, who's going to tell you about her own personal story into conservation.
Hello, I'm Katie, and I work for Warwickshire Wildlife Trust as part of the Sherborne Valley project, and I'm a trainee. So we'll be able to the next slide, please, Ross. Oh, it's not coming up on my screen. Oh, there we go. We've got it. Excellent. So, yeah, so I'm a trainee with the Sherborne Valley project, and this is a bit of my background. So I studied at university, but I studied illustration. So not what you would usually study to get into a conservation career. And after university, I did some illustration work whilst working at a library and a local authority as a support worker. So both of these jobs didn't provide direct experience for the role that I wanted to be in, but they did provide me with transferable skills, which have proved useful in getting the job and making the most of the role. So things like using my initiative, working independently, but also as a team, communication and people skills. So whilst on the surface, the jobs didn't appear to be relevant or useful, there were things I could take from those. And whilst they were good jobs and I enjoyed them, they weren't where I saw myself for the long term. And my passion was with conservation and nature. But I felt a bit stuck. A lot of roles that I saw were for those with degrees, or you needed particular experience, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get into the sector without that direct experience or education. So I was very passionate about it, and then I saw this traineeship come up. So next slide, please, Rod. So when I saw the traineeship come up, it looked exactly what I wanted, and it gave me an opportunity to get into the sector with not so much experience. But I did have passion and enthusiasm for conservation and nature and wildlife, which I think helped me to get the job. And this has been a great role for learning and gaining experience in the sector. So I started last September, and it's a 1-year traineeship. And I also get a level 2 City and Guilds qualification in conservation alongside the experience. So in this role, I've had the opportunity to do lots of different things. So I've been able to do practical work, so things like river restoration, coppicing, tree planting, as building a bridge there. So a lot of practical hands-on work, which has been great. But there's also been other side of it, things like community events, so craft events, doing helping with the Ecology group, working with volunteers and engaging people across Coventry, which is where the project is based. And I've also had the opportunity to do some surveying, which I particularly enjoy. So river surveys and using camera traps, trying to see if we've got badges on any of the sites we work on. So that's been great fun. Another bonus for the role has been the training. So there is a training budget, which I've been able to make the most of. So I've been training in a variety of different things. So I've tried to do a variety of things for employability wise. So I've done practical things like my brush cutter ticket, which will be useful. But I've also been able to focus a bit more on what interests me, like the surveying side. So I've done a course on great crested newts, which was great fun. I've just done a phase 1 survey course as well, and also learning about hydromorphology and how rivers work, which has been great for our project. And that's all helping me to gain experience and knowledge going forwards after the traineeship ends. And next slide, please, Roz. So a big part of my journey has been about learning. So before I got this role, whilst I didn't have a formal degree or formal education in ecology or conservation, I was always learning in my free time. So I read books like this one here by Lee Schofield, Wildfell, which I thought was really inspirational, and it's about rewilding and conservation in the Lake District. And that really made me think this is something I really want to get into. I also listen to some podcasts. So one on there is Ologies, which is great, and that's about all sorts of different things. She's done a lot on wildlife and nature, which have been really interesting. And a couple others are like Bat Chat and Conservation Careers. So these have been great, and I've learned a lot from them. But it's also allowed me to speak with enthusiasm and passion, which I think, yeah, has been great and very important in this role. And then I'd also recommend volunteering with local groups. So I'm part of the local bat group and part of WART, the Warwickshire Amphibian Reptile team. And it's great fun going out with them and getting some hands-on experience. So there I am holding a great crested newt, which we caught in a bottle trap. And there's also a little pipistrelle bat in there as well. So it's great fun going out and learning from people that know so much about these topics. So I would definitely recommend going out volunteering with local groups or with things like the Wildlife Trusts. They often have volunteering opportunities. And then in terms of ID skills, books are great, but I like to use a couple of apps when I'm out and about to expand my knowledge and my ID skills. So I'd recommend iNaturalist, which is great. That will ID most things, bugs, plants. So when I'm out walking the dog, if I see something, I can quickly take a picture and it will tell me what it is. So that's been really helpful to expand my knowledge there. There's also Merlin, which is another app which is used for birds. So it'll ID bird song, and you can also describe birds you've seen. So that's also very useful. And then I'd also recommend keeping up to date with what's happening in the world of conservation. So I use LinkedIn mostly for that. So I'll see what other wildlife trusts are up to, and other organisations like Heart of England Forest and all these different organisations are all doing great things for conservation. And it's great to keep up to date with what's happening over the country and further afield as well. So LinkedIn is really useful for that. And then I'd also recommend in terms of courses, so courses are great. There are free ones that you can go on online, some that you pay for, and I've done a few through Field Studies Council, which have been really useful. So my phase 1 survey that I did at the weekend just gone, that was with them, and that was really good. That was down in Epping Forest. But I have done online courses with them, like a mapping software course, which was very useful, and I'm still using that, and I find that really enjoyable. Then I would also recommend Eventbrite to look at talks, and I've learned a lot from free talks or relatively cheap talks about a variety of things, so species specific or conservation as a whole. There's quite a lot on there that you can look at and learn quite a lot. So I feel like if you're passionate and you want to do this, and if you don't have the relevant experience or degree, I wouldn't stress. There's lots of ways to get into it, and I found that learning through these ways and keeping up to date and feeling passionate about it, that comes across, and that can help you get a job in the sector. And yeah, this traineeship has allowed me to take that step in and provide me the experience to go on after the year is up. And next slide, please, Roz. I think my internet's a bit slow, but I think that'll be the last one with some pictures. So it's a couple of things I've been up to throughout this last year. And that is all from me. So I'll now be handing over to Ben from the Heart of England Forest.
Can I just Oh no, we haven't moved on to the next slide. I don't know why that would be.
Hmm.
I have
Has it
got,
moved on your screen?
no, it hasn't, not yet. I have got a colleague in the background who may be able to help. Was that your last slide?
That was, yes.
Okay,
Yep, that's the last one. So yeah, a couple of pictures of what I've been up to.
lovely. Now we're on to Ben. Okay. If you'd
Yes.
like to take it away, Ben, please.
Hello. So yeah, I'm Ben. I work at the Heart of England Forest, and I'm the Learning and Skills intern through the New to Nature placement. Next slide, please. So I think it's good to start with a bit of background of myself, where I've come from. So I grew up working class in an industrial town, Slough, just outside London. There wasn't really that much access to nature. My parents weren't really outdoorsy people when I was young. And whenever I'd go outside, it might have been with a friend's parents. And I didn't really feel welcome there because I didn't have the right clothes. And like, there's no right clothes, but compared to other people that are out there, I didn't know that there was different species of trees and things like that, but I knew I was definitely interested in it. And it kind of that, along with watching a lot of David Attenborough documentaries, sparked this kind of passion for nature. So I went ahead and I studied natural history at the University of South Wales, and natural history encompassed zoology, botany, ecology, geology, everything encompassed all in one, and I absolutely loved it. And for the first time, I actually felt that I was more welcomed because I actually understood nature a little bit. I've done quite a lot of volunteering as well. So ecology wise, I volunteer with the BTO, which is the British Trust for Ornithology, and I do wetland bird surveys with them. I do those once a month, and I do 2 different sites. And I also have done some non-ecology volunteering. So I've volunteered with a charity called Just Like Us, which is an LGBT education charity that goes into schools and basically tells kids it's okay if you're queer, and also good allyship and everything like that. And I've gotten amazing transferable skills from doing that volunteering into the role I'm doing now. Previous employment, I've done a lot of retail to get me through uni, just to pay the bills. And I've also done zookeeping. So I was an ectotherm zookeeper, which means I looked after reptiles, amphibians, invertebrates, and some fish. And it was a really enjoyable job. Again, learned lots from it, but I just didn't want to be a zookeeper for my career. So I started doing a master's course, and that was in taxonomy, which is the naming and sorting of species. And it was a lot of desk-based work. And I realized that as much as I loved the theory behind things and I loved everything I learned there, it just wasn't for me. So I made a decision that I was going to drop out of this master's course and try and figure out what career I wanted from that point. Next slide, please. So that led me to finding the forest. I found the job advertised on environmentjob.co.uk, which is a website I really recommend if you are looking for green career jobs. It updates every Monday evening, but also jobs come up constantly on there. My job was part of a New to Nature placement through Groundwork UK, and that was funded by the National Heritage Fund, formerly the lottery fund. And I'll go into a bit more detail about New to Nature in a bit. But one of the really the big drivers for me to be able to have this job was the fact that it was a real living wage job, and I was able to relocate for the job. I was looking all over the country, and there were some amazing jobs out there, but they just didn't pay enough for me to be able to move away from my parents to actually have that independence again. Next slide, please. So here are some pictures from my role as learning and skills intern at the Heart of England Forest. So I do quite a lot with the learning and skills teams. One of our main things that we do is formal learning, which is we have a progressive model that schools from the local area will come termly or half-termly into the forest, and we will teach them basically anything the school requests on the national curriculum. So if they want more sciencey thing, we will teach them science. If they want English, we'll do English. We've done geography lessons. We have done history. We do some great Roman ones as well. I think they're amazing. And it not only encourages these kids to get out in nature, but it has that nature connectedness. They start to feel like they are part of the forest. And these young children who are coming year after year into the forest start to feel that it's their own, and they can be the future guardians of the forest that's going to keep growing once we're all gone. This forest is still going to be here, and these kids are the future of our forest. We also do informal teaching or learning, I suppose. That involves our holiday club, which is called Wild Tribe. You can see that in the top left. You've got kids running up the hill, up towards the woods. We do all sorts with them. We do bushcraft, survival skills, long walks, off in nature, cooking. And I think all the kids that come along, they have an amazing time. And it's just nice to see kind of just letting them experience the forest and have what I kind of lacked when I was younger, which is the access and feeling welcome in nature. I think all these kids have the opportunity, which is amazing. We do Young and Mini Foresters, which is Young Foresters is more about getting young people into volunteering roles and kind of having that first step into volunteering in the ecological sector. And Mini Foresters, we get young kids and their families, again, to come out in the forest to experience it, to feel like they are part of it. And then in the bottom left is a picture of HAV, which is holidays, activities, and food. That gets kids who have free school meals during the holidays to get to come to the forest, and they get to learn how to cook in a forest setting. And some of these kids haven't been out in a forest setting, and it's nice to welcome them in and make it feel like it's theirs. Next slide, please. I've got once similar to my previous jobs, but I think more so in this job, I've got some amazing transferable skills from this role. So I've had the ability to work alongside some brilliant, fully qualified teachers who have taught me how to teach and how to work with different groups, different learning styles, different ages. This is something that I didn't have experience in before, but something I wanted for my future career. I've been able to help with volunteer events. So I've gone along with some surveying stuff we've done with volunteers. We've got BioBlitz coming up. So we're doing a lot of stuff with volunteers coming to do surveys, and I'll be working with the young foresters so they really get involved with it. I've had outdoor first aid training, which again is something I can take on with me into whatever my future is. Constantly learning, so not only in the teaching way, but the surveys I'm doing, even though I do have the academic qualification of working in the outdoors, I haven't done loads of it myself, so I'm still learning on the job about all these different kinds of species that are out there and trying to figure out what niche I want to go and really stick myself in. And I've also learned about what working in a charity involves. I've volunteered in charities before, but actually working in the charity and seeing how different things move, the different components in a charity that makes it work and makes it flourish and grow. Because the Heart of England Forest is a charity that has grown quite a lot, even since I've been here. And it's been really amazing to actually be part of that. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the New to Nature part. It is a funded internship that was designed to get people who may have barriers getting into green careers and actually getting them into those roles and getting them stuck in. I've been able to network with young people that are also looking to get into the sector. So I think there was 90 or 95 of us New to Nature interns across the UK. We had a big event in Birmingham last month where we all got to meet up. We got to do some skill sharing, not only amongst ourselves, but with other professionals that are in the field that came to talk to us and showed us their pathways into how they got into green careers. And what I learned from that is no one has taken the same route. There's been career changes, there's been different university degrees, there's been different partnerships and networking. And that was one thing I learned, was networking is really important in this sector. I've had access to an employment coach through New to Nature, which meant I've been able to really brighten up my CV and improve my cover letter and all these employability things that are actually going to help me get further in the future. And I've had a training budget as well with New to Nature. So at the the middle of July, I'm going to the Field Studies Council to do some invertebrate specimen ID training with microscopes and stuff like that. And that's something, again, I can take into the future. And that's been made possible by having this fund that I can use. Next slide, please. So I think the key messages that I really want to put out there is don't be afraid to start with internship, traineeship roles. Even if you've had this degree that is relevant in the sector, you need these building blocks to really get you somewhere. If you aren't able to volunteer your time, because maybe you don't have the time or you can't afford it, which is the problems I had, finding these like proper entry-level jobs and going with that and not being afraid to learn has been really important. Find other like-minded people that you can network with. So I've been really lucky through New to Nature aspect. I've been able to find other young people who are going through the same thing. I would say other ways you can find like-minded people that you will get along with would be through social media. So LinkedIn is a good one, finding people who are in a similar position to you and seeing what they're doing, what things they're sharing. Twitter used to be good for it. However, I don't know if it is so much anymore. But Instagram equally does actually have quite a good community that you can find people who are in the same sector sharing things, different conservation, like happy conservation stories quite a lot of time. It's quite a nice thing to see on your feed and see what you can do to help your local area and also the world as a whole. I personally think keeping authentic to yourself in whatever role you're going into is really important, because not only has it made this internship I've had a really happy and joyous one that I've had, but it's meant that me and my team have got along with each other. I've learned from them, they've learned from me. And yeah, I just keep authentic to yourself. And last but not least, I know it's painful to hear sometimes, but just keep searching. I am in a similar position at the moment myself because my internship is a year long and I am relocating after this. So I am also looking for jobs at the moment. And it's just keep searching, keep applying, and just believe that you are good enough for these roles. You can put yourself down quite a lot sometimes, but there are key elements and skills that you have from different careers, even if it's nice to do green careers, that you can take into whatever role you go into the future. So I will be handing over to Rob now.
Hi, so good evening, everybody. My name's Rob. I'm the River and Catchment Restoration Assistant, which is my snappy title, for Warwickshire Wildlife Trust. Right, if I can have my first slide, please. Thank you. So I thought I'd start just by talking about a bit my role, what sort of day-to-day looks like for me and what it involves. Those three pictures you can see there on the slide will be what I've done and what I'll be getting involved with later this year. Obviously not driving the big yellow machine, but I'll be stood in the river helping out, pushing those posts and brash bundles in. So very briefly, I'm employed as part of the Tame Valley Wetlands team specifically, but there is a lot of cross collaboration with other project teams. So there's a nature restoration team, a whole different bunch of people within the trust that we all work with. That can also involve working with both internal and external stakeholders, and by that, internal is one that anyone within your own project team. Externally, it can be a volunteer or a farmer, a land manager, or anybody in between. So it's really broad in that sense as well. The tasks, as I say, there are rewilding. That can be planting trees or even thinning stuff out. Habitat restoration. So one of the project teams I work with is coir roll installation, helping water voles make a recovery, hopefully. And my personal favourite, making rivers wiggle. I think it's just a great way to put it, which is what you can see in those two pictures there. So that's in-river intervention, as we probably call it properly. That's what I'll be getting involved with during the latter part of this year. And I say some of the work I've been involved with has been part of Warwickshire Wildlife Trust's own volunteer force. I think there's nearly 500 volunteers with the trust now, and corporate groups. So we have some corporate sponsors, but also those that come along and give up their time freely as well. So it's a really varied and broad role that I'm involved with. Next slide, please, Ross. So I'm coming from a different background from Ben and Katie, the two previous talkers. I'm a career changer. So one thing I think I need to stress is that I really went back to square one and literally went and got some life coaching help, I beg your pardon. And that was a matter of, what did you want to be when you grew up? So, you know, as a career changer, I really went back to square one and thought about in detail what I wanted to do. I'd always had a passion for the outdoors and the environment and just working with my hands. So that's kind of what led me to this point now. The slides you can see on the left there, where I live, just outside Burton-on-Trent, the Transforming the Trent Valley scheme, which some of you may have heard of. I was working on a little local site to us, planting trees, as you can see there, and also pulling up the hideous Himalayan balsam, which everyone I'm sure has been scarred with at some point or another. So onto my points there, having got that kind of career-changing kind of background, it made me think on what life experience, which I think is a nice way of saying I'm quite old, I could bring to another role. So during the course of my previous career, which is working in construction and that background, I've dealt with all different levels and trades and backgrounds, and you do learn that sort of skill of talking to different people at different levels and different backgrounds can be applied to any setting. It doesn't matter if you're environment, construction, the medical sector, whatever. You know, it's all good experience that you can call on. As I say at the bottom there's no such thing as bad experience in this sector, even if that's helping out with a litter picking group, which is something I did for a long time. Then, you know, it all adds to your library of skills you can draw on, I suppose you'd say. On that, I spent nearly 3 years getting my experience up by volunteering with various groups, Triple TV, National Forest, Natural England, anywhere I could get myself some experience with, I went and did what I could. It's a long, drawn-out process doing it that way, but it's invaluable when you come into, you know, into career change territory to show that you can walk the walk and talk the talk sort of thing. So yeah, that's kind of where I come from. Latterly, so May of last year, I took a leap of faith, quit my previous role, just without much of a plan to go to, which I'll touch on in a moment or two, and was lucky enough to pick up some paid casual work. I'm not suggesting everyone does that, but you know, it shows that it can be done if you're prepared to make that change and maybe make some sacrifices, and not being afraid to take that step backwards to go forwards, I suppose is the way to put it. Go next slide, please, Ross. So the sort of more pertinent bit for me, I suppose, is how I made that change. Hard work was part of it. There's no point trying to shy away from it. It's not a simple or overnight process. As I say, it took me nearly 3 years all told. But you know, it's a move I am happy to say I made. I'm now that guy that says I should have done this 10 years ago kind of thing. Part of my process was having a plan B, C, D, and E, and on with that list. When I left my previous life behind, I was self-employed for 7 months, 8 months, doing everything from paid casual work in the sector to working as a self-employed handyman, putting flat pack furniture together, amongst other things. So one of the lessons I would hope you could take from this is, you know, think a bit laterally about what you can do to support yourself whilst you're making a change, if that's where you're coming from. Something that the two previous speakers, Ben and Katie, have touched on, there's a wealth of free online resources out there. Open Learn, Open University. Social media is a brilliant one for it. Even if, you know, you find a group which isn't particularly geographically close to you, you may still pick up a tip or a hint that, you know, leads onto something else. Just talk to people. Just talk to people you see out doing that role, or, you know, if you're involved with another event or whatever. Just, you know, get out there and talk to people. It doesn't matter what it might lead on to. It might lead on to something else, which leads on to something else, but it'll get you there eventually. To the point where I started a new free online course today. So it just shows that learning process is never ending in that sense. And one of the most important parts for me is something I learned from my own process. You don't have to be an expert in everything. Nobody's an expert in everything. It doesn't matter if you're Chris Packham, myself, or any of the other people involved with the trust. No one's a true expert in absolutely everything in the field. It's okay not to know the answer. And as long as you keep on learning and keep moving forward, then that's not a bad thing. I think the overriding point, the last point I'll make before I hand over to Avery, is that you have to be prepared for setbacks. It's not always going to go your way. You'll probably get more rejections than you do acceptances. I applied for a number of different positions and roles before I was lucky enough to land this one with Warwickshire Wildlife Trust. But don't let that put you off. Everyone's going through the same process. Generally speaking, there's only one role and there'll be any number of people applying for it. It's just, you can't control who you're up against. Just keep plugging away and keep doing your thing. So on that, I think I've talked myself into a corner, and I'll hand over to Avery, who's also with the Heart of England Forest.
Yep, so as Rob said, I am Avery and I am the Assistant Biodiversity Officer here at the Heart of England Forest. Next slide, please. So same as everyone else, I will start with my career timeline. So I am similar to Rob, I did a career change. So throughout high school, I always knew that I had a passion for ecology, for the environmental sciences. I was put off by peers and told that there's no career in it. It's all volunteer based. The only jobs I'll get is a zookeeper, or I have to go abroad. And I thought, oh, well, kind of do need to make a living. So they told me, why don't you go down in the human science routes? So I did. I did a bachelor's degree in biomedical science. It went very well. I then became a biomedical assistant and then on to a biomedical scientist in microbiology. I could tell something wasn't quite right. I could tell I wasn't passionate about the jobs I was doing. It was just for money. I didn't wake up excited. I didn't wake up happy with what I was doing. And I had a moment one day when I said, I want to look back at everything I've done and be proud of what I've done and say, I did what I wanted to do and didn't listen to anyone else. So that's when I knew I had to do a career change. So as the same as Ben and as I apologize, as Katie, sorry. I did volunteering, both with the Heart of England Forest and Warwickshire Wildlife Trust. I tried to get experience in as much volunteering as I could, not just surveying, even though deep down I knew it was my favorite thing to do. I did practical volunteering as well. So with the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust, that was a lot of coppicing work in winter. It was great, and it was a great way to meet different types of people and see the different tasks that is done in conservation. Then an internship role came in the Heart of England Forest. I applied for it and got it. So I was a forestry intern for a year. This is where I gained numerous tickets, including chainsaw and tractor, and gained mostly practical skills rather than surveying skills. Then a permanent role came up as Assistant Biodiversity Officer. I went for it and managed to get it. So that is the role I currently am in. Next slide, please. So a quick overview of the kind of jobs that I do as an Assistant Biodiversity Officer. It is a very varied job. One of the main things that we do in biodiversity is species surveying. So that includes numerous things. We mainly focus on our pollinators, such as bumblebees and butterflies, but we do look at other reptiles, mammals, and invertebrates. So we look at dragonflies, we look at invertebrates such as ladybirds, and we look at specific habitat things. So in our grasslands, we look for herbs and other vegetation, so we can classify those. This is part of our habitat assessments that we do. So as the Assistant Biodiversity Officer, I have done numerous pond surveys. This is where I go to a pond, assess the features of it, and see how we can change our management to benefit the biodiversity in that pond. So when we've done our surveying and our assessments, we have to actually do the practical management. So as the Assistant Biodiversity Officer, I have to do mowing. I use my chainsaw ticket to do felling and clearance. We also do things such as invasive species removal, so Himalayan balsam, and things like rhododendron is our biggest problem, removing these species to ensure that our native species can flourish. I have a lot of office work as well, so my job is hybrid. So I do something called GIS mapping, which is using geographical software to map out our habitats. So some of the things I have done has been mapping out hedgerows, as well as classifying areas in a style called UKHAB, and putting that on a map. And all of this work goes towards forming habitat management plans. So we form habitat management plans to say, let's say, a 20-year plan that whether I'm in my role or someone else is in my role, that they can follow this plan for 20 years, 30 years plus to maintain the habitats for people and for the environment. Another thing I have to do is data inputting. So we work with a lot of volunteers, and they do a lot of surveys for us. And with surveying comes a lot of data. So we put our data into numerous national databases, such as UKHAB, which is the Butterfly Monitoring Scheme, and BWalk. So we can see how our species are doing on a national level compared to the rest of the country. And as mentioned, we work with a lot of volunteers. So we have volunteer sessions, both practical and surveying. And it's a really lovely way to meet different people of all backgrounds and to try and give them tips or skills that they haven't had before. Next slide, please. So a thing I love about my job as an assistant biodiversity officer is that I have quite a few personal projects that I've been allowed to do. So my main focus is entomology. I have always loved invertebrates and have decided to try and increase the amount of entomological surveys that we do here at the Heart of England Forest. I would like to point out it says woodlice on there, technically not part of entomology, but we'll just keep it there anyway. So I have introduced ladybird and woodlice surveying for the Heart of England Forest, primarily using volunteers, which is a great way of getting more knowledge out there into the general public about the importance of these invertebrates, as well as giving us an understanding of their levels within our woodlands. So with that comes training days. So I have done a few training days for volunteers, building up their skills, building up their knowledge, and hopefully they come away from that feeling much more knowledgeable and quite excited about some things they weren't about before. I also have to do monitoring and coordinating of these volunteers because we have quite a lot of volunteers, over 40, surveying for us, potentially more. And with that, there's a lot of coordination, making sure results come back and everyone's happy with what they're doing. And finally, I have done a management plan for one of our sites called Honeybourne, which has been a really exciting task for me because I've not done this before. So this role has really allowed me to develop my skills, despite not having a degree in ecology, in environmental science. I've just been passionate and excited, and the Heart of England Forest have seen this and allowed me to develop my skills and constantly learn on the job. So it just shows you don't necessarily need a degree in something to be good at something. Everyone learns every day. Even if you've got a degree in something, you will still be learning. And people who say they're not learning are lying, or they're very ignorant. Everyone learns and everyone should be learning. So I just want to prove that you can always learn in your job. Next slide, please. I won't go on to this too much. This is just one of the things that we've done. So one of the things I'm most proud of is our ladybird surveying now. We have nearly 20 volunteers surveying for ladybirds across the forest. So for those volunteers, I did a formal presentation teaching them the anatomy of ladybirds and some of the common species that we have in this country. So on the right-hand side are some of the illustrations I did to help the volunteers. And then we went out into the field, which you can see on the left, and used trays and sweep nets to find as many ladybirds as we could. And it was really rewarding for me to share my skills and passions, but to bring those skills and passions and rub them off onto other people, and seeing them at the end of the session quite excited about these small little invertebrates. So that's one part of that. Next slide, please. So if I haven't made it obvious, I love my job quite a lot. I wake up very excited. I wake up ready to go. And there's numerous reasons why. I mean, as I mentioned, the variety, every day is different. And a lot of my tasks are my own, so I can coordinate my own time. So I'll be one day with volunteers, then I'll be on my own surveying or doing some sort of practical management, or I'll be in the office finishing my management plan or mapping or data inputting, and just having that variety is so rewarding. You're constantly using different skills. Another thing I love is the time outdoors. From being in a career before where I was trapped inside, looking outside at the sunshine, even the rain, and just seeing the birds fly around and wishing to be out there, now to wake up and having the option to be outdoors every day is very rewarding. I think it's a huge benefit on mental health as well. I've definitely noticed that since working in conservation, no matter the reason, I think it must be because I'm working outdoors as well, it is definitely boosted. And I think being outdoors is important for everyone. The personal projects I mentioned, it really allows me to take hold of something I'm proud of and share my knowledge. And that's something that I love doing every day. Meeting people in all ways, shapes and forms. So at the bottom picture is a picture of me and Roz at a community talk, trying to engage a, I think a horticultural group, trying to teach them about the forest. And you can see at the start, they were a bit skeptical. And by the end, people coming up and asking questions and were really intrigued, and just meeting everyone from different backgrounds is a great thing to do. And another thing is the team. So in the top, at the top right is a few members of the forestry team, volunteering team, and biodiversity. And the best thing I think about working in conservation is because it's so competitive, because it's so hard to get into. And let's be honest, none of us working in practical conservation are ever going to be millionaires. We do it because we love the job, because we're passionate about the things we're doing, and we want to have an impact on the planet. So everyone you meet, you're usually going to have things already in common with them. You're going to have similar interests, and you know that you're going to have a lot of things you agree with quite quickly because we're all here in conservation in mind. So everyone is amazing. They bring humor and joy every day, and everyone's so passionate and so skilled as well. Everyone's come from a different background, and seeing their skills and them teaching me things and I teach them, it's such a rewarding team and a rewarding job. Next slide, please. So the main tips I would have, don't do what I did. If you know you love something and you're passionate about it, follow it. Don't listen to what other people say, even if they try and push you down, beat you down, say, oh, there's no money in it, that's really niche, don't bother. Don't listen to them. Follow that niche, because that's something that can make you stand out. So I think my passion for entomology, I would say, is quite niche. Not necessarily, there's probably a lot of us out there, but it's not a most common thing. And I really, really push it, and I talk about it with passion. And I think that niche really makes me stand out. So if you have your niche, that can really make you stand out as well. With volunteering, please do a variety of tasks, even if you're like me and love surveying. Do the practical things, do the things in the rain, even if it's things like planting trees in -2 degrees. Show that you're passionate and you're willing to do things to get into this field. Make connections, even if you think that their role might not necessarily be relevant, they might know someone who is relevant. So make sure you make those connections with everyone you meet. And just keep learning. You don't need a degree. There's so many things out there. There's books, there's articles, there's apps, there's people, there's podcasts. You don't need to have a degree. So do not give up. I spoke to a head entomologist called George McGavin, and he gave me a bit of inspiration when I was looking to change careers. And he told me that some of the best people who have the biggest impact in the field sometimes come from completely different backgrounds. And he's noticed that. So if you're coming from a different background, don't worry, you can still have a good impact in the conservation field. So do not give up. Next slide, please. So some of the same resources, I think I'm kind of echoing what everyone else has said, but the Field Studies Council is an excellent way of training courses. Some are cheaper than others, depending on if they're in person or online, but they're a great way of gaining some very niche skills, especially entomology, if you're interested in that. But that's not the only thing. We have training sessions at the Harvingham Forest, and I'm sure the Wildlife Trust do too. So there is just, I mean, coming along to volunteer sessions in itself is training session. But we have things like our volunteer sessions where we teach surveying skills. So come along to some of those. And then looking at things such as environmental jobs, a lot of things will come up, both traineeships and paid jobs. And other online guides. So Bumblebee Conservation Trust have a lot of online sources, and so do the Wildlife Trust, and so do we, a lot of online guides, so have a look at those. So yeah, lots and lots of online stuff for people to do. And I believe that's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks ever so much, Avery, and all of our speakers. I hope everybody's enjoyed listening to people sharing their experiences and the different ways they've got into their current careers. So now we're going to have a look at the questions that people have sent in. Don't be shy, ask anything. Down to what would it be? Rob, do you want to go first?
Sorry, could you just repeat that? Because you broke up and froze a little bit there, sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. Just what's the one tip out of them all that you'd share with everybody about how you got into your career?
I guess for me, it's never too late. I'd spent 25 years nearly in my previous career. I was 48 a little bit when I took my leap of faith. I'm now 49. Yeah, don't think you're too old or you're too late, because you really never are. You know, I will continue to push forward and continue to learn and strive to be as good as I can in this particular career now. Purely because I've found, as Avery was just saying, my passion in life. So with that sort of renewed enthusiasm and passion for what you want to do, it really is never too late. Age is not a barrier, and we work with people of all ages, backgrounds. You know, every walk of life comes to this sector, I think. So yeah, never too late, and don't look back and don't give up.
Brilliant. And Ben, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it just kind of echoes what I said at the end of my part, which was just being authentic to yourself when you are going into the sector. Find your niche, and also don't be afraid to admit when you don't know something. If you show that willingness to learn and to find out more, that can mean more than admit when you don't know things and be willing to learn them.
Thank you. Okay, now we've got a question for Katie. With traineeships, do you get paid?
So when I was looking, not all traineeships get paid. Part of the reason I went for this one is because it is a paid position, which is great. It's the living wage, which allowed me to actually make the move. I saw a lot of traineeships that unfortunately don't pay, which meant that I couldn't go for those. So it does seem to be that more and more traineeships are paid now. As I see them coming up online, they do seem to be more paid positions available. So yeah, they're definitely out there. Just keep looking.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And another question, open to any of you to answer. What are the tougher aspects of working in conservation? So
I probably have a quick one for that. So the toughest things of working conservation can, I would say, be the weather. Sometimes you're excited to go do a task and you wake up and it is tipping it down with rain, or as we had last year, -10 degrees or something like that. So sometimes you can't always do the task you plan to do, and you have to quickly adapt because it may not be relevant. So if you're surveying for butterflies and it's raining, there's no point. But other tasks, you can still go ahead and do them. So you just have to put on a raincoat, wear the correct PPE and get out there. But it's definitely building out the motivation to be able to accept the fact you might be in adverse weather sometimes, I'd say.
Anybody else want to say?
Yeah, just sort of echoing what Avery was saying there. It can be physically demanding when you're, out there up to your ankles in mud and slogging away planting trees or whatever. You will go home knowing you've done a day's graft. That though, I don't think should put anybody off. I think it's incredibly rewarding. But yeah, there will be more physical demands than you're probably anticipating. It's not all, fluffy and light. There is some hard work involved. But like I say, that for me is part and parcel and part of the reward of doing the job.
Oh,
I will say, can I just add one bit?
Of course you can, yeah.
As much as a lot of conservation stuff is physical, if people are unable to do it because they are physically unable to do conservation tasks, there are roles out there that you can look into that perhaps more desk-based or more flexible that can meet your needs.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Ben. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up there. Any questions that haven't been answered, I will make sure a response is sent to you all. But yeah, thank you again to all our speakers. I hope you've enjoyed it, those of you who've dropped into the webinar, and I really hope you've got something out of it to encourage you on your paths into conservation. So thank you everybody, and it's over and out. Take care. Bye.